On October 14, 1958, a fire broke out in a lumber yard on the west side of Chicago. An alarm sounded. Firemen responded with a unique new kind of fire truck, and firefighting history was in the making.
One day I saw men trimming trees with an aerial device. Then a few days later, I watched workmen use an industrial aerial platform to clean a high sign over a busy downtown street.
Chicago borrowed a 50-foot work platform equipped for tree trimming made by Pittman Manufacturing Company, Grandview, Missouri. To find out if the machine was suitable for firefighting, they strapped a 3-inch hose on the boom and wired a ground monitor in the basket to test nozzle reaction forces. The unit proved strong enough to handle all the water they could flow. Shortly after this, Chicago purchased the unit. Frequent hose replacement was required in freezing weather. So after a few months in service, permanent water piping and a monitor designed for flange mounting in the platform were installed. Whenever possible, Snorkel number 1 responded to every 2-alarm or larger fire throughout the city. The late Commissioner Robert J. Quinn stated in a filmed interview,
Right from the first call it responded to, October the 18th, 1958, the Snorkel proved its worth. Now, for the first time, my men can quickly, easily maneuver themselves into position to place water with rifle shot accuracy wherever it is needed. The Snorkel's speed and mobility have materially helped our department increase its effectiveness and enabled us to save countless lives and valuable industrial, residential, and commercial property that might otherwise have been lost. Equally important to any commissioner or chief, the Snorkel has boosted the morale of my men by making their work a little easier and taking some of the hazards out of firefighting. I know there have been many times when I, my men, and citizens of Chicago have said, God bless those wonderful things, the Snorkel.
Chicago's fleet of Snorkels grew and were used daily at residential fires, commercial fires, industrial fires, and to rescue people from hazardous situations. At major fires like this, it was not unusual to see several Snorkels working together. Word of the Snorkel's unique firefighting and rescue capabilities spread. Progressive fire departments, both large and small, adopted it. Training programs were established to perfect firefighting and rescue techniques with this revolutionary fire apparatus. Snorkel number 1 was in active service from 1958 to April 1968. During that time, it made thousands of runs. It had been Commissioner Quinn's intention to someday restore and preserve the machine that bore his name. Sometime after his death, Snorkel learned that Snorkel number 1 was in a junkyard in Chicago. Snorkel bought it and brought it back to St. Joseph, Missouri. It was in terrible shape, inoperable and rusting. The cab doors and sheet metal were so deteriorated that it was necessary to replace or reconstruct them. The restoration process began with removing and disassembling the Snorkel booms, mainframe, and turntable. The Snorkel was found to be in surprisingly good shape. Next, the cabinets, cab, and front fenders were removed. And finally, the engine, transmission, and rear end were removed and completely rebuilt. Extensive searching resulted in the location of components in various areas of the country to repair the cab front quarter to match the original components. The chassis frame was sandblasted, primed, and repainted. The Snorkel booms and other components were sandblasted, rebuilt to original specifications, and primed. The chassis was reassembled and body compartmentation installed. Then the Snorkel was assembled and installed. Following this, operational tests and load tests were performed on the Snorkel to make sure it met original specifications. With the testing completed, it was given a final paint job. Then, lights, siren, and deck gun were installed. This piece of firefighting history has been preserved. Here's Art Moore, who founded Snorkel Fire Equipment Company, to tell you more about the history of Snorkel number 1.
It was in late 1958, while I was still Executive Vice President and General Manager of Pittman Manufacturing Company, that I spent almost 2 weeks in Chicago chasing this machine to numerous fires. It dawned on me one night while watching the machine fight a fire in South Chicago that there was a tremendous need for this type of equipment in the fire service. With this thought in mind, it was in, I think, May 1959 that I resigned my position from Pittman and founded Snorkel Fire Equipment Company. One of the most frequent questions that I've been asked over the years is, how did we come up with naming this machine the Snorkel? We can't claim credit for naming the machine Snorkel. It was actually named by a fireman, an early fireman assigned to the machine in the city of Chicago. I was in the city of Chicago and read a newspaper article that went something like this. The fireman had been fighting a fire on the south side of Chicago on a very windy night, and in the platform had gotten soaked to the skin. Following the fire, when he came down, the reporter was interviewing him and said, why do you call this machine the Snorkel? Reporter said, I thought snorkel was something that was used on a German submarine underwater. The fireman looked the reporter in the eye and said, while dripping wet, where the hell do you think I've been? Let's take a look at the unit. These booms, on at least two occasions while fighting fires in the city of Chicago, brick walls fell on it. And this is actually the third set of booms that was installed on the original machine. We did save one of the original doors. You'll notice the two bullet holes. These are a result of the riots in Chicago in the 1960s. Today, just in time for its 30th birthday, Snorkel number 1 has been completely restored. Not just cosmetically, but to its original specifications. It is a completely functional and operable machine. So, let's put Snorkel number 1, the fire apparatus that became a legend in its own time, through its paces one more time.
After restoration, Snorkel number 1 was taken back to the Chicago Fire Station at Congress and Wells, where it was originally housed. There, a reunion was held with many of the firemen who had been assigned to those first Snorkel squads. And here are Commissioner Louis Galante, present Fire Commissioner of Chicago, who was assigned to Snorkel Squad 1. Deputy Commissioner Ronald Maloney, who was assigned to Snorkel number 1. Lieutenant Tom Wilson, retired, one of the first 3 operators on Snorkel number 1, reminiscing about the early days with a Snorkel and what it meant to firefighting.
I remember when we first put this in service and we ran with a 3-inch hose up to the basket.
Yeah.
And you'd come back and it'd be full of ice, and then you had to change that 3-inch hose all the time. But the only equipment I remember that we carried on here was a couple of gasoline cans and an extra length of hose.
But you know, something that's significant is there hadn't been a really new piece of technology in the fire service. Well, for all the while we were around until this came along. One of the things that I was always taught as a young fireman was, if you're on a squad, get that turret, get it in front of the building, and Geez, as a squad officer, every time I come in, they'd be looking for my turret, you know.
Yeah.
We'd have the portable turret pipes in the main turret going, you know. After about 3 months, it was get that thing out of the way so the snorkel could get in here, you know. I mean, and you hated to admit it, but you're on the ground, you know. Your total reach is maybe 13 foot off the ground, but you see, even this one, as primitive as it was, come in there and get up into the air 35, 40 feet, where you could really get some horizontal penetration. It broke your heart. That's when I decided I had to go on a snorkel, because they were telling me to get the squad out of the way.
Well,
then we had the best of both worlds.
Right. After
Ended up
6
with a squad
months,
snorkel.
After 6 months, when everybody got to meet us and know what we could do, we'd pull up and everybody just back off. Here comes the snorkel. They'll do it for us. Be it rain or shine, summer or winter, everybody just backed off, and we're fortunate we had the piece of equipment that could do it. And we've had people from England and France and
From all over the world.
Plus
Come down and look at
every
it.
fire chief over the country come in to see what
Well,
we
in my
got.
travels around the country, even today, they still talk about, they're still using the snorkels, and how do you like the snorkels? But you know, there were so many evacuations. I recall the incident with the elevated over on Wabash Avenue. How many trips up and down you made with the
35th
stretchers?
and Wabash,
Yeah,
and
another
also
one,
at
you know.
Cortland and Milwaukee. Remember that one?
That was another one.
That was another one there.
They ran us right out of the shops.
Yeah, we were
So
running
you
out of
always had the one big advantage with this that maybe people forget, that the average layperson isn't going to climb down a ladder that's extended 40, 50
Right.
feet.
True.
But they are going to be willing to get into a basket because they feel secure. They've got something to hold on to. And the basket and the boom are doing the moving as opposed to you depending on climbing down. So it's, you know, the direct means of egress might be something that's a buzzword, but we know that people are much more comfortable getting into the basket. And
Who
the
would have
young
thought
guys,
30 years ago, Tommy, that we'd be standing in front of this unit, you know? I don't think it looked this good when we got it.
No, definitely did. Definitely did.
Well, everything was...
Yes, old number one really started something. From this original concept, a whole new family of aerial firefighting units has evolved.